Of course, you must understand that Grey Rabbit's home had no electric light or gas, and even the candles were made from pith of rushes dipped in wax from the wild bees' nests which Squirrel found. Water there was in plenty, but it did not come from a tap. It flowed from a spring outside, which rose up from the ground and went to a brook. Grey Rabbit cooked on a fire, but it was a wood fire. There was no coal in that part of the country. Tea did not come from India, but from a little herb known very well to country people, who once dried it and used it in their cottage homes. Bread was baked from wheat ears, ground fine, and Hare and Grey Rabbit gleaned in the cornfields to get the wheat. The doormats were plaited rushes, like country-made mats, and cushions were stuffed with wool gathered from the hedges where sheep pushed through the thorns. As for the looking-glass, Grey Rabbit found the glass dropped from a lady's handbag, and Mole made a frame for it. Usually the animals gazed at themselves in the still pools, as so many country children have done. The country ways of Grey Rabbit were the country ways known to the author. It had been snowing for hours. Hare stood in the garden of the little house at the end of the wood, watching the snowflakes tumbling down like white feathers from the grey sky. "Whatever are you doing, Hare?" cried Squirrel, who was sitting close to the fire. "Come in, you'll catch cold." "I am catching cold, and eating it too," replied Hare happily. "Hare, how long do you think Grey Rabbit will be? Can you see her coming? What's she doing?" called Squirrel again. "She's at the market, buying a Christmas feast for all of us," replied Hare, and he caught an extra large snowflake on his red tongue. As he spoke, a small, stout animal came trudging up the lane, laden with a heavy basket and a string bag bulging with knobbly surprises. Straggling behind was a little snow-covered creature. "There she is!" cried Hare, leaping forward. "Make the tea, Squirrel!" He ran down the path and then stopped, disappointed. "It's only Mrs. Hedgehog," he muttered. "And Fuzzy Peg," he added, as he recognised the little fellow. "Have you seen little Grey Rabbit?" asked Hare, as he leaned over the gate. "I have indeed," said Mrs. Hedgehog, resting her burden on the snow. "She was at the market along of me. Then she went to talk to old Joe the carpenter." "What did she want with Joe?" asked Hare. "Please, sir," cried Fuzzy Peg, "I knows, sir. I knows what Grey Rabbit went to the carpenter for." "Shh!" Mrs. Hedgehog shook her head at her son. "You mustn't let the cat out of the bag." Then, picking up her basket, she continued on her way, with little Fuzzy Peg protesting. "There wasn't a cat in the bag, Mother, there wasn't." It was growing dark when Squirrel and Hare heard the sound of merry voices and the ringing of bells. They ran to the door, and what should they see but a fine scarlet sledge, drawn by 2 young rabbits, with little Grey Rabbit herself sitting cosily on the top. "Oh, Grey Rabbit, what a lovely sledge!" cried Squirrel, and she rubbed her paws over the smooth sides. "Grey Rabbit, our names are on it!" shouted Hare. He pointed excitedly to the words Squirrel, Hare, and Little Grey Rabbit written round the sides. "It's ours! It says so!" "Yes, it's our very own," said Grey Rabbit. "I ordered it from old Joe, and these kind rabbits insisted on bringing me home." After breakfast the next day, Squirrel and Grey Rabbit sat on the sledge, and Hare pulled them over the field. They came to their favourite hill. Hare mounted behind them and stretched out his long legs. "One to be ready, 2 to be steady, 3 to be off, he cried, and away they went down the steep slope. Woo! cried Hare. What a speed! Whoops! Whoa! But the sledge wouldn't stop. At last it struck a molehill, and over they all toppled, head over heels. 60 miles an hour, cried Hare, sitting up and rubbing his elbow. Little Fuzzypeg, carrying a slice of bread and jam, came to watch the fun. He stared at the 3 dragging their sledge up the slope. I want a toboggan, he said softly, but nobody heard. Look at me, toboggan! Watch me! cried Fuzzypeg. He made himself into a ball and rolled down the hill, faster and faster. When he got to the bottom, there was no Fuzzypeg to be seen, only an enormous snowball. What a big snowball, cried Squirrel, climbing off the sledge. What a beauty, exclaimed Grey Rabbit. Help! Help! squeaked a tiny voice. Get me out! What's that? cried Squirrel. Help! Help! piped Fuzzypeg. That's a talking snowball, said Hare. Isn't that interesting? I shall take it home and keep it in the garden. He dragged the large ball onto the sledge and pulled the load uphill. When he reached the top, Hare rolled the ball to the ground and gave it a kick. Oh! he cried, limping. There's a thorn inside. Help! Help! shrieked the tiny, faraway voice. Let me out! That sounds like Fuzzypeg, said Grey Rabbit, and she bent over and loosened the caked snow. Out came the little hedgehog, eating his bread and jam. However did you get inside a snowball? asked Hare. I didn't get inside. It got round me, replied Fuzzypeg. Can I go on your sledge now? Hare took the little hedgehog for a ride, but when Fuzzypeg flung his arms around Hare's waist, he sprang shrieking away. That's enough, he said. My motto is, never go hedging with a sledgehog. Never go sledging with a hedgehog. Fuzzypeg ran home and returned with a tea tray. After him came a crowd of rabbits, each carrying a tray, and they all rode helter-skelter down the slope, shouting and laughing as they tried to race each other. Squirrel, Hare and Little Grey Rabbit took their sledge to Mouldy Warp's house. Squirrel ran up the holly trees and gathered sprigs of the blazing red berries. The mole came out and showed them the mistletoe growing on an oak tree, and then he helped them to tie their branches on the sledge. They said goodbye and hurried home. Hare shut the sledge in the woodshed and carried the holly and mistletoe indoors. Grey Rabbit stood at the table making mince pies, while Hare and Squirrel decorated the room. They popped sprigs on the clock, over the corner cupboard, round the warming pan, and on the dresser. Little Grey Rabbit looked up from her patty pans and waved her rolling pin to direct operations. Up the lane came a little group, carrying rolls of music and pipes of straw. They talked softly as they walked up to the closed door of Grey Rabbit's house. They arranged themselves in a circle, they coughed and cleared their throats and held up their music to the moonlight. Now then, all together, cried an important-looking rabbit, playing a note on his straw pipe. 1, 2, 3. And with their noses in the air, they began to sing in small, squeaky voices this Christmas carol. Holly red and mistletoe white, the stars are shining with golden light, burning like candles this holy night. Holly red and mistletoe white. Hush! What's that noise? cried Hare, dropping his mistletoe. It's carolers, said Grey Rabbit, and she held up her wooden spoon. They flung wide the door and saw the little group of rabbits and hedgehogs peering at their sheets of music. Come in, cried Grey Rabbit, come and sing by the fireside. You look frozen with the cold." "We're all right," said a big rabbit, "but a warm drink would wet our whistles." Grey Rabbit took the two-handled Christmas mug of primrose wine from the fire, and the carolers passed it round. Then they stood by the hearth and sang all the songs they knew. "The moon shines bright," "I saw 3 ships a-sailing," and "Green grows the holly." "Now we must be off," they said, when Grey Rabbit had given them hot mince pies. "We have to sing at all the rabbit houses tonight. Good night! Happy Christmas!" Squirrel, Hare, and Little Grey Rabbit stood watching the carolers as they crossed the fields, listening to Holly Red and Mistletoe White, which the animals sang as they trotted along. "I think I shall take the sledge and toboggan down the hill by moonlight," said Hare. He seized the cord of the sledge and ran across the fields and up the hill. Then down he swooped, flying like a bird. Again and again he rushed down, his eyes on the lovely moon. Suddenly he noticed a dark shadow running alongside. It was his own shadow, but Hare saw the long ears of a monster. "Oh dear! Oh dear! Who is that fellow racing by my side?" he cried. He took to his heels and hurried home, leaving the sledge lying in the field. "Did you come home without the sledge?" asked Squirrel. "Hare, you are a coward. I don't believe there was anybody at all. You ran away from your shadow. You've lost our lovely sledge." "Better than losing my lovely life," retorted Hare. He felt rather miserable. "I suppose we'd better go to bed," he muttered. "I don't suppose there will be any presents tomorrow. I don't think Santa Claus will find this house with so much snow about." He went upstairs gloomily, but he hung up his furry stocking all the same, and so did Squirrel. When all was quiet, Grey Rabbit slipped out of bed. Under her bed was a store of parcels. She opened them and filled the stockings with sugar plums and lollipops. Then she ran downstairs to the kitchen, where the dying fire flickered softly. She tied together sprays of holly and made a round ball called a kissing bunch. Then she hung it from a hook in the ceiling. On Christmas morning, Grey Rabbit was so sleepy she didn't wake up till Hare burst into her room. "Grey Rabbit, Merry Christmas! He's been! Wake up! He's been in the night!" "Who?" cried Grey Rabbit. "Santa Claus!" cried Hare. "Quick, come downstairs and see." Grey Rabbit dressed hurriedly and entered the kitchen. "Look at the kissing bunch," said Hare. "Isn't it lovely? Let's all kiss under it." So they gave their Christmas morning kisses under the round Christmas bunch. Robin the postman flew to the door with some Christmas cards and a letter. The little bird rested and ate some breakfast, while Hare examined the letter. "It's from Mouldy Warp," he said. "Yes, I know," replied Robin. "He gave it to me." "You're reading it upside down, Hare," cried Squirrel. She took the little letter and read, "Come tonight, love from Mouldy Warp." "It's a party!" cried Hare. "Quick, Grey Rabbit, write and say we'll come." Grey Rabbit sat at her desk and wrote on an ivy leaf, "Thank you, dear Mouldy Warp." Then away flew Robin with the leaf in his bag. All day they enjoyed themselves, playing musical chairs, pulling tiny crackers, crunching lollipops. They all trooped to the hill to look for the sledge, but it wasn't there. Snow had covered all traces of footprints. "Santa Claus has borrowed it," said Grey Rabbit. "When the snow melts, we shall find it." When the first star appeared in the sky, the 3 animals wrapped themselves up in warm clothes and set off for Mouldy Warp's house. They carried presents for the lonely mole and some of their own Christmas feast. "What a pity you lost our sledge. We could have ridden on it tonight," said Squirrel to Hare. When the three got near Mouldy Warp's house, they saw something glittering. A lighted tree grew by the path. "Oh dear, something's on fire!" cried Hare. "Let's put it out." "Hush," whispered Grey Rabbit. "It's a magical tree." On every branch of the tree, candles wavered their tongues of flame. On the ground under the branches were bowls of hazelnuts, round loaves of bread, piles of cakes, small sacks of corn. There were jars of honey as big as thimbles and bottles of heather ale. "What do you think of my tree?" asked Mouldy Warp, stepping out of the shadows. "Is it a fairy tree?" asked Grey Rabbit. "It's a Christmas tree," replied the mole. "It's for all the birds and beasts of the woods and fields. Now, sit quietly and watch." Across the snowy fields padded little creatures, all filled with curiosity to see the glowing tree. "Help yourselves!" cried Mouldy Warp, waving his short arms. "It's Christmas. Eat and drink and warm yourselves." From behind a tree, Rat sidled towards Grey Rabbit. "Miss Grey Rabbit," he said, "I found a scarlet sledge in the field last night, and as your family name was on it, I took the liberty of bringing it here." "Oh, thank you, kind Rat," cried Grey Rabbit, clapping her paws. "The sledge is found! Come, Hare, Squirrel, Mouldy Warp." The scarlet sledge was clean and bright, and on the top was a fleecy shawl. From under it, Grey Rabbit drew 3 objects. The first was a walking stick made of holly wood. The second was a little wooden spoon. The third was a tiny box. And when Grey Rabbit opened the lid, there was a little thimble inside, which exactly fitted her. "I've never had a thimble since Wise Owl swallowed mine," she said happily. "Good Santa Claus!" cried Hare. "He knew what we wanted." "Only one person could make such delicate carvings," said Grey Rabbit. "And that is Rat," said Squirrel. "3 cheers for Rat!" cried Fuzzy Peg, and they all cheered. "Hip, hip, hooray!" Squirrel and Grey Rabbit climbed on the sledge, and Hare drew them over the snow. "Good night! A happy Christmas!" they called. "The same to you!" answered Mouldy Warp. The hedgehog family waved and shouted, "Merry Christmas!" "Hey ho, I'm sleepy," murmured Squirrel, "but it has been lovely. Thank you everyone for a happy day." She curled down under the fleecy shawl by Grey Rabbit's side, clutching her wooden spoon. Grey Rabbit sat wide awake. Her thimble was on her finger. Her eyes shone with happiness. Hare ran swiftly over the frozen snow, drawing the scarlet sledge towards the little house at the end of the wood. "Mistletoe white and holly red, the day is over, we're off to bed. Tired body and sleepy head, mistletoe white and holly red."